Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Productivity Mastery. Last week we had a very exciting guest here with us, Zach Nadler, who's a partner of Gary Vaynerchuk, and we talk about the speaking industry today. Another very, very exciting guest with me this morning. We will be digging into the world of entrepreneurship. I had the pleasure to meet this lady that you have a chance to hear from just in a second. A few months ago, Fo Hussain is somebody who has joined one of the Startup Wise Guys programs. So we had a chance to be part of a boot camp in Copenhagen. I was leading a Perform boot camp, and she was one of these founders that's asking all the questions, wanting to get more out of the things, contributing to the discussions, very, very proactive. And I had the chance to learn her story, to learn what she's doing, and I really, really appreciated what she had to share. And I believe that the things she has to share will be very meaningful to everybody who's listening here. So, Fo is a founder of a couple of companies, a founder and CEO of a couple of companies, EEVA and Smart Fashion Club. She is part of the Startup Wise Guy Sustainability batch. She's a mother. She is a growth-minded person. Fo, good morning. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start unpacking, shall we? Um, Tell me about your journey as an entrepreneur. Where did it start? Why did you decide I want to be building my own companies as opposed to working for somebody else?
I don't think anyone would employ me, so I don't think it was an option. Um, I don't remember it being a decision. I always remember being a bit of a pest to my mom. I always, thinking, let's do this. I want to do that as a kid. And I remember, we had horses from as early as when I was 5. And horses are expensive. Even if you have a dog or a cat, or you have kids, they're expensive. Horses are like 10 times more expensive. And so, what I did to make a little bit extra money was start buying younger horses and breaking them in and training them and increasing their value and selling them. And I didn't think of it at the time, but I guess that was my first go at entrepreneurship. And then more officially, in a more commercial sense, I just had my daughter and I just got divorced, and I thought I'll start a business. Why not? And so I started a clothing brand for kids called Ari London. And I saw an opportunity, and I was just being a mom at the time. So although I was busy, I also had all this extra time to think and to plan and learn. And so I used that time to start a company.
Great timing, right? Getting divorced, having a daughter.
Yeah.
Why not start a company?
Yeah, why not? Add it to the list.
So let's start from there. Maybe you mentioned the horses, and I haven't really spoken to you about that, but I've seen on your LinkedIn that you spent 5 years in Dubai and you've been an international Olympic shortlisted dressage rider. First of all, can you give us for the general viewer or listener, what does that mean exactly? And is that just the continuation of your background, your family, or how did that happen, and how is that helping you today as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So definitely not a continuation of my family. That's another example of me wanting to do something and doing it. And again, horses is not an easy sport to get into. It's not something, your mom buys you a racket and drops you off at the tennis court. There's a lot of equipment and obviously a live animal and lots of training to get you to a point. And so I had horses since I was 4. I think my first memory of riding was in Florida. So we lived there for a couple of years with my family, and I used to go Western riding, the big Western saddles on this horse called Shiloh, and we used to go bareback in the water, like a movie. And I remember it to this day, and I think I fell in love. And I convinced my mom to buy me my first pony when I was 6. And then, the rest is kind of history. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the discipline, the hard work. Every sport is a lot of hard work. I think I have so much respect for people who are dedicated to sports, but horses, I would say, it's a little bit more difficult because, you have the mucking out of the stables. You have animals to feed at 5 o'clock in the morning before school. You have them to take care of and to bathe and all of their equipment. So it's not just you who has to be in top physical shape. You also have that animal and all the equipment with it. But I would say, I mean, it was the best years of my life. And I think everything I do now, I always say to people, everything I do, whether it be EVA or Smart Fashion Club, it's all based around my time outside, appreciating the world, the animals, the creatures around us. And I think my time writing gave me a lot of respect uh, for the environment, for nature. And so that my career had ups and downs, as with any career. So I was doing really well. I was competing on the international circuit, and then I got picked up by an American writer called Cindy Rawson. I went to train with her down in Somerset, and then I outgrew that pretty quickly and got picked up by the Danish Olympic team, who were sponsored by Lego, and moved out there in Billund. Lots of snow, an amazing place, completely different culture change for me. I was 19, I think, at the time, 18, 19. Lots of hard work, but around the best. There was the Danish Olympic team there, there was the German, I mean, and these incredible horses. And then my moment there kind of ended due to an injury. And I would say that was like probably one of the worst parts of my career because I was young and I was so invincible. I was always going up, was always getting stronger and better, and it was always so much more positive. And then I had an injury, which really wasn't, shouldn't end a career, but mentally I wasn't able to handle it. So mentally, I wasn't the star of the show. I was sick in bed, not glamorous at all. I had cast. I couldn't really eat, go to the bathroom. And so you become this person that you weren't before. And instead of me overcoming that and bouncing back a year or 2 years later, I decided to go to coaching and started coaching children of the royal family of Dubai in the UK. And that was an amazing experience. I was trying to see the silver lining. And even though it wasn't me riding, at a competitive level, I was still working with amazing horses. And then that took me to Dubai for about 5 years.
Let's maybe get into the moment of the injury. And I would imagine a lot of people can relate to this, like having this vision, this dream of what do you want to do with your life, and then in one single moment, it collapses. Was that the same for you? Was that for you? Your whole identity is being attached to this vision, to this dream, and all of a sudden, can you tell me? Can you lead me through the mental narrative that you had at these moments, and what happened? What changed for you so you managed to find the strength to move on?
So I remember feeling really ashamed. I remember this overwhelming feeling that I, I just wasn't who I was. I lost that identity. I lost that power and confidence. And it really was my life. I was waking up at 5 in the morning, going to bed, or finishing work at 10, 11 at night. It was everything. What I ate was, for me to be an athlete, what I did, my exercise, everything revolved around that person. And then I remember just laying in my mom's bed. I was flown back to the UK, and I had this cast on, and I was shouting for her, for a bottle of water. And I just felt like such an invalid. I felt like the complete opposite of what I was. And it's not a fairy tale story. I didn't quickly bounce back. I didn't really know I was in it. Now I'm years after grown up and matured, I can see what happened. But I took the job for coaching, and I really should have bounced back. Horses is the one sport you'll find when you watch the Olympics, you'll have 60-year-olds winning gold medals. and it's the one sport where you have men and women competing against one another. So there was really no excuse, but I wasn't the person I am today. And if I could speak to that person, I would say, hey, this is just a little blip in the path. Like, get on with it, recover, get your fitness back. You are who you are, and mentally just get ready because you can go back to it. But I think I think it might be an age thing, an immaturity thing, where you're very much focused and on who you are, and if that changes, maybe my examples with sports, but it might be with business, or it might be a relationship. You lose that confidence because it was that made you who you are, that made you sort of whole. Whereas now I feel like if that happened, and now I have so much crap go on with work. When I look at that injury, it's nothing. Uh, it's just getting on with it, the resilience, um, and pushing through it all.
Yeah, and in many ways, if that didn't happen, you wouldn't be who you are today. And I think this is a really good reminder for everybody who's going through something, big or small. Right at the moment, it feels like the whole world collapses and there's no hope. But if you get a bit of a sense of perspective, some of the biggest struggles usually end up being some of the biggest blessings, in terms of the lessons that you learn, in terms of the strength that you develop. So if you're listening now, you're struggling with something, hold on, things are going to get better. And sometimes we tend to believe that success is this one linear line, right? You got to be a professional horse rider, or you have to be a super successful entrepreneur or an athlete, you name it. But maybe that's not what you're meant to be. Maybe there is something else out there for you that will come at the horizon sooner or later. And I'm very, very grateful to you for being very open and actually talking about your struggles. I think we need to talk about our struggles much more, not just about success. Of course, success is important, but also to be able to people relate to struggles, people relate to the pain that we're going through. So thank you for being open. And
Yeah, definitely. I think it needs to be normalized a little bit more, whether it be in sports or just even with work. I think there's so much pressure on men and women to be, everything under control, to be perfect, to have success. And the truth of it is that actually none of us have that. We have blips maybe on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or you have something going wrong for months on end. But I feel like there's a lot of pressure. You've got to just keep face, and it's not a sign of not success. Actually, the success is if you get through it. If you overcome that challenge and you come out the other side. For me, that's where the success is. Adapting to whatever's going on. But yeah, I feel like there's a stigma around it. Like for me, I'm looking for investment right now, and it's like it almost feels like you kind of need to be, fit in this box, and not have, not say issues, but everyday problems or hiccups, and maybe you're not investor ready or whatever. And I think that also comes with, being a leader or being a CEO. Or, we also have problems, right? And they can be they might seem to other people really small, but we also have our own battles, and I think that needs to be normalized so that you can talk about it. Because actually, when I talk with the people I work with, and we usually try and have a session, which you inspired, by the way. We talk now, not as often as I'd like, but probably every 2 weeks. We don't talk about work, just check in as if you're talking to a friend and just find out how they are. And it's just a chance to listen to them. And it's amazing when you actually find out what's going on in that person's life, because in work, you seem like a robot, just on you go, it's fine, and kind of you've got that face on. But when you sit and listen, you find out, this was another person just like me, and they're going through whatever it is.
yeah, we had in Copenhagen when we met, we did a mastermind session where, and it's always really interesting because it's not that it's like a rocket science, nobody can come up with it, but because when you set the frame that you're allowed to talk about your struggles, it's part of an exercise, people kind of open up and they have a place that they can safely share, and they realize how important it is. And I think one of the biggest benefits of this type of approach is you understand everyone is having similar challenges, right? Like the the the, the narrative that you talk about, that the stigma that there's this successful perfect entrepreneurs out there, it's just not true. you know you meet a lot of entrepreneurs. I have a chance through this podcast, through my work, meeting people, other speakers at conferences, entrepreneurs of, you name it, you know unicorn companies, executives of top companies. Even if you think about some of the productivity gurus out there, David Allen, getting things done. We had a conversation on the podcast, and it was very interesting. He was like, you might think I'm the hyper productive, every minute is structured. I'm the laziest guy you'll find out there. He has his mornings, he's very intentional about them, but he have his mornings very kind of open and spontaneous, and something is not gonna go by plan. And I mean, it is, it's the truth. It's how things are. Like, I mean, you make a lot of decisions that end up not being good, and that's fine. You just try to do
Mm,
your best. You pick yourself up. You have a really bad day. I mean, yesterday I had a really low day, energetically, not mentally. I just woke up. I didn't sleep well. I've traveled for 2 months, had 32 flights in 2 months, right? So, I
wow.
came back last week, but I'm still recovering because the week started.
Mm,
And people are like, oh, Stoyan, he's the productivity guy. He's always on, lots of energy. Well, not really, but I try to get myself back to the right mental state. It's like, it's a journey, right? Like, I mean, having a day that's not so good, that's fine. Sometimes the whole week is not going to be so good. How
oh,
can
I
I
had
get
one
the
of those last week, like the week of all weeks. And I was battling through it from Monday to Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I said, that's it. I'm gone. I'm away. And I learned this a few years ago. When there's something which you're battling with, you're fighting, it might just be one problem, it might be many. It actually can help if you can just take a step back, go and meditate, go and walk, whatever it is. For me, it's meditation, walking, anything but work, anything about thinking about that. And actually, the solutions will come to me. But in that super tense, hyper stressful moment, but it's just nonstop, but you're also trying to carry on with your other everyday activities, emails, phone calls, etc. And then you have this kind of thing closing in on you. I think my best advice is have the courage just to step away for a moment. And you're not throwing the towel in, you're not defeated, you're not any less. It actually takes someone brave to say, I'm going to be gone for an hour, or it might be half a day, or it might be a whole day, and back tomorrow, and you've got the solutions, or at least you can think clearly about it. That's where I was last Thursday. I was like, that's it. I'm out.
And thank you so much for sharing. And we got a beautiful comment from one of our listeners and a dear friend of mine, Navid. I would like to read it for you. So he's saying, greetings from Austria. Stoyan, as always, you have an abundant supply of inspiring guests. Need you learn that from you, my friend. Fo, thank you for sharing an amazing journey. For a father of three teenage girls, I admire, respect what you have achieved during your journey and much more. And then he's probably tagging an hour connection of ours, Raya. Raya, Fo is your brand like a girl ambassador. Way to go. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Navid,
lovely. Thank you, Naveed.
for joining us. And maybe that would be a good topic to explore next fall. Like you mentioned, you are a mother, you are building two companies, you're very ambitious, you're part of Startup Wise Guys program, which those of you who are part of the Startup Wise Guys family, you know that it's very intense, it's super meaningful, it's super valuable, but it's also it's heavy, right? Like, you have so many workshops, sessions, you got to reflect, you got to work on the business. You have two businesses, you have your kid to take care of. So could you maybe give us a bit of a perspective on how do you how do you prioritize? How do you manage your workload with your personal life?
That would probably be the E in your perform, effective planning. Planning, and also this sense of it doesn't always go to plan. And if it doesn't, it's okay. I spent a lot of years stressing that everything has to be perfect. And I felt I had to do more so when I became a mom because I felt like I was less, because I was juggling motherhood and I didn't have as much time as everyone else to be working because I was splitting it with my daughter. And so for me, it meant, okay, the time that I have is so meaningful, it's so valuable. And so when I spend it with my family, it's very important. And when I spend it with work, it's also very important. I don't want to waste it. And so comes down to effective planning. Now, I haven't by no means look at me and think I've nailed this and then I have this in tip top every single day. Some days it just goes to crap. But I try and I start with lists, and I'm sure many people that are listening today also use lists. I think it's one of the most simplest but effective ways of not only planning what you have to do, but also getting that feel good. I think one of my highlights of my day is picking up, well, this is my daughter's pen, and ticking off a task. Like, and even better when you get through the list and you actually add more throughout the day because you have time. Like, yeah, that's a spa session for me. That's therapy. So I'm like, yes, I got it done. So with the sustainability accelerator of Wise Guys, first of all, it is an amazing experience. I worked really hard to start raising investment for EEVA, something I've never done before. Businesses I've always self-funded. And so it was a completely new thing. And having worked with my own companies for years and having worked in sports, I felt like this kind of corporate world is slightly different for me. With Smart Fashion Club, we didn't really have a website until a few months ago. We never marketed, we never pitched for customers. It was always word of mouth. So me going to ask for investment, which is maybe another podcast, is actually a very interesting dynamic. You're asking someone for money. That's something I've never done in my life. Anyway, but the best news I got was I actually the news that I found out that I was in was a few days after my great grandmother had passed, or I think it was a day after. And I actually was doing the boot camp, the kind of the sessions with the team in her house that week. So it meant even more because she's my North Star. She was my inspiration. But the funny story about that, my first pitch was Wise Guys was in this office in my house. My internet was playing up and it was sort of a group pitch. You had other companies pitching and I got, a bit nervous and I was, I think, third on the list, but I didn't come up. It didn't call for me. And so it got to the end and I'm desperately emailing everyone, please, I got a pitch where, don't forget me. And thankfully they didn't, but my internet was so rubbish. I didn't really get much of a chance to pitch, but they must have saw something. And my daughter went, how did it go? And I went, oh, definitely a no. Internet was rubbish. I didn't get across what I needed to say. That's another no. And she knows about investor calls. It's either a good one or a bad one. But anyway, cut a long story short, they saw something in us, in the team. They saw something in EVA, and we've got this amazing news. And I think for anyone who's fundraising, you may only be doing it for a few months or maybe doing it for a year. It's gruesome. It's hard. It's emotional. It's draining. But when you get one yes, it feels like a million. You feel like they believe in you and what you're trying to accomplish. And I went and met the Wise Guys out in Copenhagen, where I met you. And I think that's great. The rest of the program is remote, but the fact that we went and met Startup Wise Guys, that we saw people in person, we had the sessions, in person as well, and we met the other startups. That was so valuable. I mean, that was a great experience. I think as well, if you're used to working remote like I am, and having your team split around, it was extra valuable for someone like me to get in a room with other people and have these conversations. I thrived off of that. that was a great experience. But going back to your point, it is intense. Some days we have meetings like literally back to back, but it is what it is. Like for me, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, to be on the accelerator, to speak to people who know their stuff and to get an hour with them, to pick their brain, learn from them so I can apply it to myself, to the company. You're not going to get that anywhere else. Like you could go on a YouTube video, but you're not going to get nearly as much value from it. You could read a book, but it's never the same from that in-person experience. So yeah, I would recommend to anyone, if you can join an accelerator, if you're at that stage, particularly with wise guys, because there's quite a few people in my group who've been on other accelerators and they have said with wise guys it's way better. And I've had a great experience. I think the content that we're given is bang on in terms of who we are as a company, and also what stage we're at. That's really important, because otherwise it's just not applicable to you. And obviously it's sustainability accelerator, and that's what we're all about. So that's been amazing, talking about the impact, and figuring out what your impact is as a company and as a solution, and having these conversations with fellow startups and hearing their ideas and their thoughts. And it's nice. We're like this little micro family within the Wise Guy family. And we give advice on our pitches, or in my case, my nerves when I'm doing like a live pitch, which it's so silly. I think the worst is going to happen, and of course it never does, but I work myself up into the state. And so it's nice, and they're in the same position as you, and that's lovely, because when you're out there fundraising, the dynamic is you're joining a call asking someone for money, and it's for me a very unusual situation. I don't do that. I don't ask anyone really for anything, particularly money. So in this situation where you've got the other startups, you're on an equal playing field, and you're going through the same stuff, the same battles.
It's very interesting. If those people who are listening right now might be even wondering, like, she's such a great communicator, and you are, you're very good in conveying a message, you're very inspiring. Yet when it's about for you to pitch and ask for money, this thing in your words is changing. Why do you think is that?
It's probably for me a little of a personal thing, part of my character. I'm very independent. And if I need something, I will make it happen. And so, and particularly with finances, I've never asked for any help. Like I said, when I had the horses, my mom was obviously funding that, but to help scale that, I went off and bought and sold horses. So it's a strange position to be in. It's even to this day, I've done so many pitches, and to go to someone and say, I have this great idea with traction and it's proven and we have customers, and yet you still kind of feel like down here, and it's like sort of like, but please would you give us money? And I find that very strange, because often when you get on these calls, you'll meet an analyst or an associate and you don't know them from Adam. Of course, you will have done your research on LinkedIn and checked out their profile, and hopefully you will have done your research on the investor, on the fund, and that's why you're speaking with them. But you don't know them, and they don't know you, and you have 30 minutes to really pitch the business and the opportunity. But for me, there's so much more behind that. For me, this is, years of work, and there's people behind it that work with Smart Fashion Club that have made this happen. And it's trying to convey all of that in 30 minutes. It's really difficult. So I think, you've got to just try and pitch as much as you can and what's important to them. So then you can get to that next stage and hopefully break down the barriers, and it is a more even playing field. And I think once you have a second or third call, I think the scales kind of go you're a little bit more up there now, a little bit more power, and the dynamic changes. But I think I don't know about anyone listening who's done fundraising. It might be exclusive to me, this feeling. I'm sure it's not, but it's a strange one.
I doubt it's exclusive to you, but there's probably some people who are doing better, some people that are doing worse. But I'm sure that everybody's going through these kind of inner conversations. I was in Tallinn last week with the fintech batch of wise guys, and one of the sessions we did there was around discovering limiting beliefs and questioning, challenging these beliefs. Because we all have these kind of narratives, right? Like um, either we pick them on the way, either they're based on experiences, right? Like I've been trying to sell in Germany. I tried for a month, nobody's buying. They don't like our product in Germany. Maybe, right? Like it's based on experience, or it's just ingrained in you, right? You're like, I'm not good at, I'm not good enough for X, right? And I wonder how do you deal with these voices and these limiting beliefs yourself? If you catch those, like how do you still do whatever needs to be done? Because again,
Mm.
you want your company to succeed, and sometimes the biggest obstacle for that is ourselves.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think what's different though, so I do have those voices, probably less now as I'm as I've grown from, those teenage years. But for me, it's very much like I can take action. So if I feel like let's say sports, for example, when I didn't win or I didn't feel like we'd done a good enough job, I can go back home and train and improve. With work, you can put in extra hours or you can make a different strategy or, it's taking action. That's how I respond to the voices. I think with the investor thing, you're being told no or maybe. It's very difficult for you to change that in that response. So I think with anyone who has those voices, it's all about taking action. Like for the pitching, my action is just getting it done, putting myself in those really awkward, gruesome moments. Like we were pitching on stage, part of the Wise Guys Accelerator in Copenhagen. And that for me was single stressful, but also positive impact moment because I'm sitting there and I know I'm going to go on stage and I didn't even pitch. I just had to introduce myself. And bear in mind, when I was younger, I used to do TV presenting for BBC. So I've been on camera. And this should not be a problem, but I was scared of standing up in front of people that have been around for a week. It's totally preposterous. There's no logic to it. But I had worked up this thing, the voices in your head, which are often not speaking logic. Um, and my action was, I'm going to sit here, as painful it is, and I'm going to go up on that stage and get it done. And I ended up doing it 3 times because our mentor was like, no, you need to go back and do it again. And I'm glad that he did because it took away that painful. And I'm so happy I did it. And sometimes I imagine my daughter's there. In that instance, I remember thinking, if she was here, I would not want her to see me walk away from this. I want her to see that I'm human and that I fail and I get scared and whatever, that's fine. But I want her to see that I overcome it. Because if she was there, she'd be laughing at me. She'd be, what do you get on stage, mom? What, like, you're always messing around in the house. Like, how can you be scared of that? And I would be saying the same to her, right? You'd be saying, get on stage and nothing to be scared of. So for me, overcoming the voices is all about action, just pushing through as hard as it seems, because it never is as bad as you think. It never is. And all these kind of irrational thoughts that you think are going to happen, they don't. And for example, with investors, the worst that they can say is no. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
I love it. So your daughter in many ways is a huge inspiration and helping you to be a better leader, to be a better founder.
Yeah, she taught me so much patience. So I was not the most patient person before I had my daughter. And I'm not the most patient person with myself. So my expectations of myself are really high. And if I can't do something, I do struggle. I get disappointed in myself. I have to do better. And that drives that action to keep persisting and improve. Um, but she taught me a lot of patience and understanding, which I've then used with work. People skills, understanding. Everyone's human. Everyone's got their own thing going on, and usually what's happening at the surface and what you see isn't the real story. Um, and that's been, for me, that's been life changing. Because if you had met me 10 years ago, I'm telling you, it was the least patient person. So she's a huge impact on that, on me in that sense, but also inspiring me to just crash down any barriers or like stigmas, and excuses, because I want to do what I teach her, what I preach. I want to actually practice that. So I'm there saying, you can do what you want, you're a strong girl and all this. So who am I then to be sort of thinking, oh, well, like, I shouldn't be doing that? Or so I want to show her, because I think as a parent, that's the best thing you can do. And I think our children learn from our actions more than they learn from, say, a book or from a lecture or a speech. They are observing us all the time like little sponges, and they're kind of like spies. You don't know that they're learning from you at that time, but they are. They're picking it all up. And now my daughter's 8. She's almost 9, so she's grown so much from just the past year. And she's so smart. She'll pick me up on things now. She'll go, didn't you say that, mom? But you always taught me to do that. Why are you saying I shouldn't be doing that? And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, wait a sec, let me think. Because now it's kind of biting me in the backside, but it's good. It challenges you and it helps you articulate. You were saying earlier about me being a good communicator. I would say that's my biggest weakness, is articulating, because I'm a very creative person, and I want to kind of make an elaborate way of communicating what I say. It's not often to the point. But with kids, they're super simple. They say when you're creating a pitch, make it as if your 7-year-old can understand it. And for me, I actually do that. I'm like, okay, 5 minutes. What do you think? And I give her my pitch, and she's like, what does that word mean? What's that? So she's learned all these things like LTV and CAC at 8 years old.
So
Yeah,
you're first
I've
pitching
learned a
to your
lot from her.
daughter. You're first pitching to your daughter before you go to investors.
Oh yeah, I've pitched to her endless times. She knows the whole pitch. She could probably do it better herself. That's an idea, maybe.
That's a great idea, right? Like, because it has no emotional attachment, and of course there's the cuteness element. Maybe you should give it a
Yeah,
try.
yeah. She'll probably get a yes on her first go.
There you go. There you go. Fo, I want to ask you. I want to ask you. You've been now in the ecosystem for several years. You're running two companies. Obviously, the last few months being part of an elite acceleration program as Startup Wise Guys. I wonder, from your perspective, what makes a difference from a founder that's doing well to a founder that's doing exceptional?
I think exceptional comes from persistence. So I wouldn't take it any more granular than that. I've always said success, excellence is from not giving up. It's keep going. And that goes back to my sports days. I remember we were going to an event with one of my horses. It was about a 5-hour drive. We should have been up at 3 in the morning. And when you do dressage, you should pleat their hair. You may have seen it on TV, like little pleats, and you bundle it up. You can't go in without doing that. And I had overslept. It was like 5, and I had not done these pleats. My mom was like, okay, we're not going, no worries. I said, no, we're going. And I'm going to get in the horse lorry and I'm going to pleat the horse as you drive. And you shouldn't do that. It's dangerous. It's not a good idea. But we did it, of course. And we got there. I don't think we won, but came second or whatever. But we went. We persisted. That for me is excellence. It's not the winning that you could say is necessary excellence. It's just it's the keep going. It's the adapting. I think as humans, those who are the most successful to me are the ones that are able to adapt. Companies the same, right? If they can pivot, if they can adapt, whether it be COVID or customers are down or whatever, new competitor, The ability to adapt, that makes you excellent.
I'm just getting goosebumps, and when you are talking about that, it reminds me. I'm not sure you read the whole book now, the Perform book, but I don't know if you remember the story that I added there. We interviewed um, the most successful Bulgarian Olympic athlete, Maria Grozdeva, and she shared with me this story where she was at the Olympic Games, and I think she won a couple of gold medals. She has, I think she's the second most, most successful athlete in her category ever. So she
Wow.
was at the Olympic Games, and she needs to shoot, and she's doing well. She's getting to the finals, and now she needs to shoot, and at some point she gets a lack of concentration. And I think the highest is a 10 that you can shoot. They have to shoot many times. So she's shooting 10, 10, and then at some point she's shooting 8 and another 8. And she's getting these doubts and so on. But she's still in the game. And then they have this kind of pause. And she was talking to the person who is taking care of the what do you call that, the gun? No, what is that called?
The rifle?
The rifle.
Yeah, the
Thank you.
gun. Yeah.
The gun, the rifle, and the person who's taking care of that, and she's just complaining. She's like, I can't do it. And then the guy was there, and he was like, well, Maria, do you remember this story about the frog? There were two frogs, and one of them was, got drowned, and the other one was pushing, 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 and at the end made the milk turn into butter, and it managed to succeed. And she listened to the story, and somehow she was like, you know what, I can do it. So she was behind. Now she goes, and she's like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. At the very end, because it was really, huge tension and so on, she she has she really made up a lot of points, but she didn't manage to. They were on the same points with somebody else, so they have to do penalties. And she was very tired and everything, so she was shooting and shooting, but then she shot a 9 and she was out. And she was like, even though I didn't win the medal, I went for dinner with my friends and I was celebrating, and they were like, what's going on, Maria? And she was like, this was the biggest win for me. It was the biggest win because I realized how much more I can get if I'm persistent, if I have the right kind of mindset. So she was actually celebrating as a winner in a moment when she didn't win. And when you mentioned and shared this story
Amazing.
about the persistence, um, I, I feel like we can do so much more. We can do so much
Yeah.
more.
Oh yeah, it's like you're saying, staying in the game. As long as you can stay in the game and be in your zone. Do you watch tennis? So if anyone's listening and they watch tennis, you're gonna know Djokovic and Federer. Why are they so great beyond their technical ability? Because when they're in their zone, like Federer particularly, he can go from being down and climb back up without, and maybe inside, I don't know, but from the outside, I don't see pressure or stress. I don't see him getting angry and throwing rackets. And that's what I was saying. Whether it's being business, relationships, whatever it is, sports, it's all about, you're gonna have low moments. It doesn't make you any less. It doesn't mean you're not a top leader or you don't deserve to be CEO of that company. It's how you come out of it. That's for me is, excellence. That for me is, the creme de la creme kind of thing, is, how you turn that bad situation into a good one, or at least just get out of it and continue business as usual. Because it's like that with sports. You don't get a chance to say, oh, I'm out. um, I'm not going to keep going, because you have fitness to maintain, you have obligations, you have training, you have to keep battling. And part of that's why part of it's so gruesome, because there is no, it's unsexy, like you were saying about entrepreneurship. It's not glamorous like on the Netflix TV shows or whatever. But the feeling you get when maybe you don't win, but you turn up and you do your best and you overcome a personal challenge. Like for me, when I did that pitch, I mean, all I did was to go on stage and say, hi, my name's Fo. But I felt great after, because I turned up, I stayed in the game.
That's it. You gotta turn up and stay in the game, and I think actually that's I'm just guessing here, right? But I guess that's what the team of wise guys saw in you beyond your business model, beyond like business model, markets. This is important, but the most important thing is the founder and the team, and that I'm guessing that that's what they saw in you. She's a winner. You know, she has this mentality, positive mentality. I want to learn. I want to ask questions. I want to grow, but I'm also going to be persistent. I'm not going to quit when the big major challenge is on the way. And I wonder if that's also how you're hiring people. Is that part of your checklist that the person needs to have a certain type of mindset? Like, do you hire former sports sports people, or like, do you have any kind of suggestions on that?
Yeah, definitely. So when you work with supply chains, things always go wrong. So the one of the best things you can do is hire people that can handle that, because there's always going to be problems. Like last week, I was saying was a bad week, and it was because issues within our supply chain for a client. So the ability to adapt to that and not let it consume you, that's what I look for in someone way above skill set. You know, you can have all the skills and the degrees that say that you're the right candidate, but if I see that you can't handle a slightly different situation, stress, or we have to pivot or whatever, uh, it's not going to work. Not in our team, especially when you work with supply chains, because there's so much unpredictability. I think one of the reasons we survived COVID was that we adapted. Now we've made a lot of changes. We halved our team because we lost so many clients. Um, some of our customers just don't exist anymore because they couldn't survive COVID. But we adapted, and it was very difficult. It was painful. There was crying involved. But you crack on, you get on with it. And if you love it and it means, you're passionate about it, and you can, for me, if I can make a difference, because it's not just about business, it's about delivering impact in every business I do. If I know we're doing good, we should be continuing the next day. So yeah, not necessarily recruiting ex athletes, but definitely those that kind of adapt, um, and just take on whatever's thrown at them. And I think with EVA as well, it's the same, because it's startup. You're wearing so many different hats. You know, what you're doing on a regular basis isn't necessarily what you'll be doing the next week. And there's always changes. There's so much unpredictability with startups. So you need to work with a team that enjoy that. And it's not for everyone. I always say startup life isn't for everyone. And the stage where you are in your life right now, it might not be, but maybe in 10 years it will be. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's finding the people that are happy to work in that environment. That for me is the best fit.
And what do you do when things are not going by plan in terms of being, as a leader, as a founder? You mentioned COVID, for example. Things are going, you have your plans, and then boom, something happens with the market, with your customers, with the industry. What would be your recommendations for leaders out there when things are not going by plan, when there is a crisis, when there is a hit?
So in that instance, we had a lot of suppliers in China, and that was our biggest Achilles heel in that moment, even though we work out of other territories. So for us, it was all about finding the solutions and not being caught up in the trouble, in the problem. How can we facilitate this to be a solution? How can we make it better? I think that's important. No blaming, no finger pointing, no getting caught up in the problem and making it, because I think when you're a leader and you get brought down, the rest of the team are looking at you. And if you're looking like, whoa, this is Titanic, we're going down, like it's over. You can't really expect the rest of the team to be like, no, we're going to fight this. So I think you've got to keep it together as much as you can and look for the solutions. You know what? This is not a life and death. Most of our work, I'm not a doctor, I'm not operating on people on the table. It's not life and death, it's business. And so perspective, I think, helps. You do the best that you can. You remind your staff as well, because COVID was obviously a very unique situation. It wasn't just business that was affected. You had, I had teammates that lost family members that were sick. So you've got all of that going on. They're humans at the end of the day. They have families. So it's staying positive. It's going to sound cliche, but that's how I am. I don't know if I was always like that, but certainly the past 8 years, for me, always a silver lining, always a positive. It is what it is. Let's move on. For me, it's always like, okay, let's go. And I remember I'd say to my daughter, if she falls over, not now so much, but when she was younger, those kind of like 5, 6 are at the playground and a bit unsteady. There's a little grade. I go, okay, let's go. Up you get. And that's kind of how I go through most of my things, like, okay, let's go. And it might mean it's a strategy session and you're going to be working at it for a few hours, or it might mean, like I said earlier, you go off and you go take care of yourself for a couple of hours so that when you come back, you're fresh and you're actually able to help and deliver.
Thanks for sharing. And I wonder also how important is for you the physical well-being connected to being in a good place to handle a crisis, and do you intentionally double down on your physical well-being when things are getting tough?
Yeah, I think so. For me, sports is therapy. So if I am feeling stressed, I will go off and do sports because it's a way for me to let out negative energy. But at the end, I usually come back feeling stronger as well, and I feel more peaceful. I've tried meditation on and off for years, and didn't it just didn't click with me. And then a few people at the same time were telling me last year, you need to meditate, you need to meditate. And I don't know what changed, but I went back into it and it works. Like it clicked for me. It's not a chore. It's not like I have a reminder. I can sit at the airport and just go off in one. It's not like I have to make an effort to do it, but it really changes my mindset. I'm so much more clearer, so much more calmer, and problems don't seem so big. So that for me is a must. And do you remember in Copenhagen we went for that walk
Mhm.
around the city? I encourage everyone, especially now with remote working, to just get up. Like don't feel like because you're not sitting at the desk, you're not working. Like if you're, tell your boss if you need to get up and go for a walk. You can do calls, on your phone or your earpods. You can be thinking and working out a plan or whatever. There's so much you can do from just getting out of the chair and stretching your body and get your body moving in the fresh air. And it's usually, again, I'm so inspired by nature, but when I go out, I hear the birds sing or the sky, and the smell. It smells different, especially up here. I'm on the mountains, so you got beautiful smell of the trees or whatever. For me, that's like, yeah, like I'm ready to go. I feel pumped from that. I don't necessarily feel pumped sitting at a desk all day. That's a bit deflating for me. So for me, taking care of yourself, whether it be sports or for me cooking. So, although my day might be jam packed, I will go off and make myself a home cooked meal. Obviously if my daughter's here as well, but even if she's at school, I still go and eat. That's for me, it's therapy. It's an outlet. I'm cooking, and I'm getting a good meal, and I feel healthy. And I don't like that imbalance of working or doing something to such an extent that your body suffers, your well-being suffers. I don't think that's worth it. Maybe for short bursts, but I think generally you've got to take care of yourself.
And I think that's one of the reasons the many people were in a bad state during the pandemic, because there were all these kind of discussions online: what pill should I get and what could be something vaccines, but we didn't talk enough about go out there and exercise, eat well, take care of your mental health, like all these kind of things that are preventative. It doesn't mean it's not going to get sick, but you have a way better chance to feel better and to even have the right kind of immune system to go through um, these difficult times, not just in terms of a virus, but in terms of difficult times for any difficult time, right? I feel sometimes for me it's like I'm overwhelmed, and it seems like the problems are so big, so huge. And then it takes me a few days to just get back on my habits, sleep well, exercise, just not overwork. And then it's like, it's not that bad. Actually, it's okay. It's just something to solve. It's not really a problem.
Mm.
So just having the right kind of routine. I mean, for me, that's been the biggest challenge the last couple of months. When you're on the road so intensively, you go for a run, you go to the gym in the hotel, but sometimes you have a flight, 5 in the morning, whatever. So it kind of disturbs your regime, and it's challenging. But then you have to appreciate when you're home and you have actually the space and the time to prioritize on those things. Hashtag optimal energy. So
Yeah, no, I feel you. We were supposed to speak a while back, and I couldn't because I had issues with my flight. I've been on the road for about 2 months actually, visiting end of year meetings, customers, new clients, suppliers, investors. And I eventually got back to my home yesterday, and it took me 3 days to get here because of the snow delays in Heathrow. Snow was like this, by the way, guys. But anyway, um, 3 days to get here, missed flights, lost luggage, or whatever. But I definitely struggle. I I am a very spontaneous person, and I can, react to things and adapt very quickly. But I thrive off of a routine. I thrive off of being at my home, waking up 6 o'clock, going for a hike, all of that. I do very well from it. And I kind of battled it for a while when I was younger because my brain is like, no, like let's do this, let's do that. But actually, logistics are I do much better on a routine, and travel just messes that up. So it's difficult. So I'm just going to spend the next month, 6 weeks here with a routine, just enjoying being home and not living out of a suitcase.
right, and it's not an excuse. I mean, it shouldn't be an excuse, but it definitely hardens the things, especially when you have so many ambitions and goals. So, um, yeah, let's try to find in the next few weeks now around the holidays time to for self-care, for well-being, and
Yeah.
so on. Hopefully those of you listening maybe also can kind of slow down a little bit around the holidays. I know that it's holidays and it sounds like a lot of food and calories, but again, we can try to be more disciplined around that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, final question so we can wrap up this episode. You've been an inspiration for many, right? Like you are running companies, you're confident, you're the CEO, you are raising your daughter, trying to give her the best possible example. What would be your message to the ladies out there listening to us, to the mothers, to those who have ideas, who have dreams? What would be your message, your advice to them?
Um, oh, I probably have a few messages. I think first of all, I don't see myself as an inspiration at all. And I'm probably one of the least confident people out there that I'm aware of. But it's all about getting on with it. Ultimately, I have these goals. This is what I want to achieve. Now, how do I get there? And what do I do to have to get there? And so I think I would say to anyone, women and men, because we, both equally have so many different pressures and stigma and whatever. What is it you want? What makes you happy? What do you need? What do you want to achieve? There's no excuse. Go out and get it. Like there's really no excuse. I think I'm in an extremely lucky position. Many people say, gosh, how do you manage a single mom and two businesses? I think I'm privileged. There's people out there in much more challenging situations. So for me, it's no excuse. And I give my daughter the same advice. If you want something, you got work hard for it. It's not going to happen how you think it's going to happen. Get back up, adapt, move on, stay in the game. But always remember what it is that you want, and that will probably change. Like companies do, and that's okay. But don't let yourself create excuses for yourself, and don't let the world create excuses, reasons for you not to be able to go after what you want.
What a beautiful way to finish up this episode. And for just for the audience who is listening right now and maybe want to follow your journey, want to connect with you, want to learn more about EVA and Smart Fashion Club, would you just give us a quick suggestion? Where could people get in touch? And the short version of the pitch of what what your companies do and where they can find them.
Yeah, sure. So you can find us, best ways to reach out on LinkedIn. There's Smart Fashion Club and EVA. EVA is two E's. So it's like Eva from the Pixar Wall-E movie, if anyone has watched that. Smart Fashion Club, we help companies build smart, impact-driven supply chains, primarily in fashion, but we do work with other companies. We help with digital strategy and actually looking at your supply chain, not just from aesthetics and margin, but also from an impact point of view as well. And then the EVA, we have a digital platform that helps companies manage and source their materials with less waste and less carbon emissions. So you can actually go and find fabrics in the 3D form and apply them to a design, a digital design, in just a few minutes. There's no waste. And then no lead times and emails and WhatsApp messages. Where's my fabric? Where's my samples?
Thank you so much. For you guys heard very well where you can find for you can get in touch. You can find the EVA Smart Fashion Club. I want to thank everyone for being with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend, with somebody that will benefit from it. If you enjoyed it, obviously there's 132 more episodes, so you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We will appreciate a rating in any of these platforms. Thank you once again, and keep up the great work. Keep following Productivity Master. We'll be back with more exciting guests. So, yeah, let us know what you think. Have a great day, everybody, and keep performing.
Thanks, Dorian. Bye.